Thank you, Jim. It's great to be here this morning. Just have to get my notes set up here. So thank you for inviting me to speak today. As mentioned, my name is Ian Bartels. We have a family business called Budget Demolition, and it's a part of our family business anyway. I'm here to talk to you about the Mosaic Studium, a historic football stadium that our firm was involved with taking down. Tell you a little bit about our company. Our umbrella company is called Budget Environmental. We started out as actually a waste haulage company in the early 90s. My dad started with 2 trucks and half a dozen bins, and we slowly built that up between him and my brothers and so on. And about the late 90s, we started doing some small demolition projects, houses, garages, site cleanups, just to generate more waste for our haulage company. We have a few companies. Of course, Budget Bin is our haulage company, Budget Demolition. I have a company called Regional Disposal, where we receive and process in excess of 80,000 tons per year of C&D materials, recycle and send to landfill, the residual waste. And we also run a scrap metal receiving facility. And lastly, the newest company is called BD Salvage, where we salvage architectural items, clean them up and prepare them for market. So here's an overhead shot of the stadium that we're involved in. In 2016, the City of Regina, along with the owners of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, put out a nationwide pre-qual for demolition contractors. Our firm was one of 3 invited to bid the project, and we did end up being a successful proponent there. Before I get started on the project, I'll tell you a little bit about Canada. Here's a map of Canada. Ontario is in the middle with it's the most densely populated area in Canada. Down at the bottom is Southern Ontario, almost directly west of where we are right now, about an 8-hour drive. Canada is the 2nd largest country in the world, and it's 5,500 kilometers from coast to coast. This project was located in Saskatchewan, in the city of Regina. So that's about 2,500 kilometers from our home base in Ontario. For the Europeans in the room, that's the same distance roughly of traveling from London, England to Faro, Portugal. Here's a population density map, just to give you a little bit more idea of our great country. Canada is home to 37 million Canadians. Only 1.1 million of those live in Saskatchewan, and a little over 200,000 in the city where we are working in. So Ontario, densely populated, Regina, wide open prairie land, and a whole lot different than we were used to. A little bit about the fans, the people of Regina. They love their team, and the stadium we were taking down, the Mosaic Stadium, was very important to the history of their team, and there was a lot of people that were disappointed to see it go, so we had to be sensitive to that, especially considering that we're from Hamilton and we have a competing team in the CFL. We didn't advertise that too much. So this brings us to, this is the overhead view of the old stadium. 2016, they built a new stadium, a beautiful stadium, and it was time for the Mosaic Stadium to be decommissioned. Here's a view of the west stands. This is prior to us starting on the site. And here we are surveying the site after our initial award of the project. Bear with me, I got a little ahead of my notes here. So there's a number of key challenges I want to talk about today. Number one was how we were going to demolish the west stands. Number two, the logistics of traveling 2,500 kilometers from home and executing this project. And number three, the weather. And number four, the residential neighborhood where we were working. First challenge were how we're going to take it down. The east stands where we could execute with a regular high-reach demolition machine. The west stands are about 130 feet high, 400 feet long. Ideally, ultra high-reach demolition machine would have been great for this, but there wasn't one in Western Canada that was available to us, and the cost of bringing that across from Canada was just not feasible. Next option was blasting, but the City of Regina had stipulated no blasting in their tender package. So then our next thought was to do a strategic cut and pull on the structure. So high reaches out, we decided the best way was to pull, and the biggest challenge here was convincing the city, the team owners, our clients, that this was a safe way to do the project considering where it was in the city. Canadians are known as being very polite, agreeable people. So first I went to them and said, well, just trust us, we're going to pull it down, it will be fine. As it turns out, that wasn't good enough. Of course, we had met ASI 2013. I was fascinated with the work they were doing, their 3D modeling. We actually brought ASI in as part of our pre-qual package, as well as our tender package. So this is a bit of a 2D modeling that was a part of our early stages of submissions to the city and the owners. The idea was to prepare a demolition plan that would safely take down the structure the first time. The approach was plan the work the plan. And ASI prepared this for our initial presentation to the city as part of our tender package, along with this two-dimensional model of the stadium coming down. After budget was awarded the project team worked with the estimating team, safety team, and our operations to finalize it. The initial plan changed very little from our initial proposal. Here you'll see a cross-section of the west stands. So the idea was to take down the lower stands and the pedestrian ramps on the backside with a 90-foot high reach, and then we would remove floor sections and non-structural elements of the center section and remove bracing as instructed by our engineering team. This is us getting going. We were actually awarded the project September 1st, and we had scheduled the draw for October 27th. So between September 1st, we had to mobilize to the site, do disconnection of services, abatement, rigging of a bunch of items that they wanted to salvage, and then get to the drop date, which coincided with a home event for the team. So we want to give the team, the fans of the Rough Riders, an opportunity to see the stadium come to the ground. Here's a 3D model of the other elements stripped away. What we did once all the strip out had been done, you see this red line across the front of the stadium. There was a continuous beam installed, welded column to column. This would be our pole column that we'd pull the center section of those columns out to the side and topple the stadium. Next, here on your left, you see a detail of one of the front columns. Each column received a series of 4 cuts, a wedge on the front and a straight cut on the back, leaving a little web in the middle remaining. On the straight cut, as we cut it, we installed shims so it would prevent any settling prematurely. Here's a detail of the back columns. We cut through those 100%, installed shims as we went. So it's just the center columns that were secured, and the other 12 columns front and back were were cut through. So what we did, we had machines parked on the side of the stadium and attached a heavy cable, which again was engineered by ASI. They were able to tell us our pulling force, and we pulled the pull beam and pulled the legs out of the front of the structure. So this all seems like a pretty easy plan until the day of, and we're standing here under this mammoth structure, and you start to second guess everything. You've got the cuts made, and we're looking at it and going, I don't know if this is going to work. Our engineering team assured us that we would be in a good position, and we stuck with our plan, had confidence in the ability of our men, and everything went according to plan. This is a picture of a few of our team members that came from Ontario. They were key in bringing into our discussions early on, so they knew the overall picture of what we were going to execute. They had opportunity to provide their input as well on what our plan was, and with them fine-tune the final process, so we had a lot of buy-in from them even before they left home on what we were expecting of them. We did work with a number of local contractors for rigging, salvaging of equipment, abandonment of services, and disconnection of a bunch of items as well. As far as abatement and demolition, we brought our own forces from Ontario, and they were there about mid-month, and we're on schedule to complete the drop October 27th. Recognizing that they would be away from their family for quite a while, we flew them back and forth every other weekend, and then we had a team event planned for the day of the drop where we flew their spouses out and entertained them for a day, and they were there to witness the big event. So another big challenge for us was the weather. We're further south in Ontario. The winters in Regina settle in often the first week of October. We were fortunate that we didn't have the first dramatic drop in temperature and snowfall till a week after the drop, so that was great. But we did plan for the worst and hope for the best. Plan for the weather included corralling equipment together at night, try to keep them out of the wind, plugging them in, and also making sure our guys had the proper gear to stay comfortable so they wouldn't be fatigued and cold halfway through the day. They were working -20 to -30 degrees from late October or early November right up through February. So it was quite a challenge and a little different than we were used to back at home. Another big challenge was the residential neighborhood. As you can see, we're surrounded on three sides by houses. The east stand actually overhung the street somewhat. There were services there was houses right across the road, so we had to make the city feel comfortable, the residents, how we would deal with them and accommodate them when we were taking down this section. But of course, the west stands were our big challenge. Challenge being we were planning to drop this structure, as I said, 130 feet high, 400 feet long, about 6,500 tons on ground that had the composition of jello. They called it out there gumbo clay, which is like just a thick, gooey clay. To give you an idea of what it was like, just when we got there initially, just our men tapping their buckets on the ground had people coming out of their houses wondering what we were doing. So the vibrations just traveled right through. So the last challenge I want to talk about, I'm sorry. So a few things I want to discuss. First, communication played a huge part in successfully executing this project. Early on, we invited the city out, the community into an open house. We laid out the entire project, planned for community, including key milestone dates so that they're able to understand and prepare for what was happening. Next, we did a detailed traffic control plan to satisfy them how we're going to move the debris out of the city, what roads will be closed, how people will make their daily commute around our work site. Next was dust control. Of course, when we're dropping a structure that big, even the other work, it's always an issue preventing dust migration from the site, and we had to work through that and monitor that every day and update our client with how those controls were working. Lastly, as I mentioned, vibration monitoring. What we did is did a bunch of sampling up front on what kind of vibrations the adjoining structures or nearby structures would encounter when the structure hit the ground. What we ended up doing is building a concrete berm in front of it, and we were able to mitigate any serious risk with that method. So lessons learned from this project was commitment from all team members was essential up front, especially for such a logistically challenging job. Another lesson learned was the media. If you're involved with a project similar like this, iconic stadium or building, expect to set a little time aside for this. I didn't set enough time aside for this the day of. It was a major headline event across Canada, and it was carried on a bunch of US Canadian sports channels the evening news too. So I spent quite a bit of time with the media that morning. Working with the experts was really important to us, working with ASI. One of the things we had overlooked in the early stages was, as I mentioned, the geography there was super flat. We got out there and realized how high the wind speed was, and really started to wonder, when we had this whole building prepped, are we going to have some premature collapse potential? So we were able to model the wind speed and see what wind speed we could work under without having that risk of the building coming down prior to us wanting it to be. Lastly, dust control, of course, as you know, is always a challenge. So even though we did have dust control on the site, we could have done, if I had the opportunity again, I would have brought in some additional means to do that. So now we've seen, had the opportunity to see all the 3D modeling. Here's a video of the day of our drop. As I said, we scheduled for our team to be in town playing a game, and we had fans coming from all over the province. This was early in the morning. The cars were starting to line up, and we had probably, I think, 4,000 to 5,000 people surrounding the area outside of the safety zone, of course, waiting for the drop to happen. Thank you very much.
So any questions for Ian that anybody in our audience may have about his project? So I got one or two, Ian. You mentioned in your presentation that the local government was against explosives. Did you present a feasibility analysis to show that it could be quicker and cheaper than tripping?
We had the discussion early on, but they just didn't want to entertain it at all. They were terrified of the idea of explosives for some reason.
So it's great to know that money's no object in some communities,
yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah. The other one is,
It's Canadian money. It's not
It was
real money.
Canadian money. We've, every community around the world has a passion for sports, and you alluded to it, but how passionate were the locals, and are they satisfied now with the end result and what they have as a new?
Yeah, they were. They built a beautiful stadium, but of course they were out in droves the day of, and it was a big day for them to say goodbye to their stadium.
Yeah. Okay. Once again, thank you for Ian.